Hello again and welcome to another Warhammer 40k Mordian Glory video. Now before we get into today's video guys, I would like to say a big thank you to James M. Townsend for sending in an awesome picture of his classic Deathcore of Krieg squad. Absolutely love the Deathcore of Krieg. Got a big army of the old boys myself and just love the models through and through. Thank you for sending these in. Really just like the classic paint scheme. Can't go wrong with the blue greatcoats, bluey grey greatcoats. Always reminds me of the World War One sort of late war, well at least not early war French uniform. Yeah, I've actually thought, just go off on a tangent for a second before we get into today's video. This has actually made me think I would love to do a World War One French army. I think it would look really cool. Probably get the bits from like Anvil Industries and have the Adrian helmets and all that kind of stuff. I think that would look really cool. Anyway, thank you James for sending this picture and getting my creative juices going in my brain thinking. If anyone else has got any cool pictures they want me to use in my videos, please post them on my Facebook page. There will be a link down in the description below. And for those of you that don't have Facebook, which is, you know, more and more people these days are, you know, going away from Facebook for one reason or another, you can email me pictures into mordianglorytv@gmail.com. I don't check that email as much as I check the Facebook page, but I do check it at least once a week, so you're more than welcome to send pictures there. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into today's video. Now, you guys know I am no GW fanboy. I'm not also a GW hater. I'm pretty straight down the middle with my GW political affiliations. I think they do some fantastic things. I think they do some just terrible things, just silly decisions. And one of the things I would say, and it's going to be a fairly controversial opinion, I actually kind of feel sorry for them in some ways, because they are at the moment, I would say, and have been for a while, really stuck between a rock and a hard place. Okay, now they don't do themselves any favours, and they often make people get, you know, there's whole channels dedicated, you know, out there to just being salty about Games Workshop. You know, there's the people that make an entire living off being salty about Games Workshop. That's how much salt that these guys generate. But I guess, you know, when you're at the top, everyone wants to take a piece of you. But what I would say is and it's very easy as a player to get salty about Games Workshop and go, "Bah, what are they doing? Bah, like they make no sense, bah," and like don't do that. And but they are stuck in a rock and a hard place. Now, what do I mean by that? You know, I got to explain myself. You know, I can see the pitchforks, guys. I can see the torches lit, but I got to explain myself. You know, I got to give you a reason. If you still want to burn me for heresy at the end of the day, well, you know, the Emperor's got 4 arms, so what can you do? But what I would say is, there's a community, the community within Warhammer 40k, and you know, Warhammer in general, but you know, not as much in Age of Sigmar, but more in Warhammer 40k, is split into 2 broad camps. Okay, and these camps have both got very loud voices, definitely loud voices, and they both want very different things. So you have the camp of creativity. Okay, these are the people who just want really cool stuff, right? Really cool stuff, really original concepts. And these are the people that, you know, before there was an Adeptus Mechanicus, I'll give you an example. Before there was an Adeptus Mechanicus army, I went to a tournament and saw someone who had a full Adeptus Mechanicus army. Every single model in the army was converted to look like was converted to look like Adeptus Mechanicus stuff, and he used the Tao rules for his army. So this guy, he didn't have Adeptus Mechanicus army, but he was creative. He wanted an Adeptus Mechanicus army. So every single Scutari in that army was modelled like uniquely. Every single one had different cybernetic augmentations, because, you know, not every Scutari is alike. You look at the admech, they'll plug things and wire things, and they don't really care. And every Scutari is going to look pretty different. It's one of the things I like the new admech range. I say new, it's a bit old now, but I like the current admech range. But a lot of the Scutari look similar. And I have always imagined, this is just me personally, everyone's imagination is different, but I've always imagined the Adeptus Mechanicus to be totally sort of unsymmetrical. Totally, you know, no two servitors are the same, you know, no two Scutari are the same, no two tech priests are the same. You know, they've all, you know, they all look different. That's the whole point. They're sort of like technology sort of gone rampant in a funny sort of way. Not like Tau, but they'll you know, the flesh is weak. You know, you have to be pretty bonkers if you think, you know, replacing your whole body with a caterpillar tractor and then having your brain separated out into 8 bits and each jar does a different thing. You know. Anyway, point is that this guy was creative and he had put the love and attention into his army, and that's really cool. On the other camp, you have the camp of competitive play, so camp of creativity and the camp of competitivity. I don't think competitivity is a word. We'll go with competitiveness. You've got competitive players, you've got creative players. There you go. But the camp of competitiveness wants the game to be balanced. Okay. Now, with a game like 40k, you're really going to struggle to get it balanced. Someone I know, actually, my local sort of Games Workshop manager, who I get on quite well with, he said, look at StarCraft 3. StarCraft 3 has 3 factions and about, you know, 12 to 2 dozen units per faction at most, and they've never got it perfectly balanced. There's always some meta. There's always something which is stronger than something else. There's always something. It's pretty well balanced, but it's not perfectly balanced. Look at 40k. You know, you can't balance a beast as grotesque with as many tentacles as 40k. You can't, but you can try. You can try your best. But the sort of cult of competitive play wants Games Workshop to try and balance things. And when a unit is broken and overpowered, these people scream the houses down. Okay, now it's interesting. I would say there's sort of a sub-faction, just to go off on a tangent a little bit. There is a little sub-faction of competitive play, which I would say is properly like tournament. You know, we're talking really high-level tournament players who don't really care if the game is balanced or unbalanced. If there is something which is broken or overpowered, they'll simply just use it until it's not broken or overpowered anymore, and then they'll move on to the next thing. These are the top-level tournament players. Whereas the vast majority of competitive play people, I'm not talking about those. I'm not talking about the people that don't care if the game is broken or not. The vast majority of competitive play people are the ones, I should almost call them like match play or fair play, the camp of fair play, whatever. But these are the people that they want the game to be balanced. Okay. Now the problem is that these two camps want very different things, and Games Workshop, no matter what move they make, they're going to piss off one camp or the other. Okay, they are going to piss off one camp or the other. Many people straddle the line between both camps. You know, I consider myself a competitive player, but I will turn up with my Mordian Iron Guard every day of the week, whether it's powerful or not. But when I was able to, I was going to tournaments. I tried to go to a tournament at least once every 2 months, at least. If I wasn't able to go to a tournament every 2 months, I would make sure, you know, if not every month, I would make sure that I went to, I had at least a competitive game against a competitive player down at my pretty competitive Warhammer club that I'm part of. It's not my club, I don't own it, I'm just a member. The Mordian Glory Academy. No, nothing like that. Anyway, so these two camps want two different things. Let's take a look at this. Case in point, let's look at the Deathcore of Krieg. Okay? Deathcore of Krieg, before the great cull that we recently went through, where they got essentially taken round back like Old Yellow and put down. They had a beautiful model range at their height. To be fair, when the final death blow did come to the Krieg model range, it was already a shadow of its former self. It was like the late Imperial Roman Empire. You know, it was nothing on what had come before, like the Byzantine Empire in comparison to the great, you know, the Roman Empire at the height of its power. The Deathcore of Krieg used to have one of the most expansive model ranges out there. and it was amazing what you could do with that army. By the end, they'd been slowly whittled away to the point that, you know, when they went out, I'm surprised that they generated as much media attention as they did from non-Krieg players. Just goes to show how beloved the faction was. I mean, they're still around, but I'm talking like they're dead. But the point is that they were an incredibly creative army. And Games Workshop went, okay, they are creative and they are cool, but they're this sort of sub-entity to the regular Imperial Guard. And by having, every time we make a change to the regular Guard Codex, we have to also make a similar or separate or different change. We have to take Krieg into account. And it's just a bit messy. It's just a bit unstreamlined. If we don't update Krieg, then they'll, from a competitive point of view, they'll start falling behind. So Games Workshop took the logical decision, not the decision they made with the brain, not a decision they made with the heart, and they went, okay, we'll fold them into the Guard Codex. You know, why do they really need their own infantry squad? They don't really need it. They like the Krieg community, like having it, and it's really cool, and some people have built some play styles around it, but by and large, they don't really need their own infantry squad. You know, they don't really need that. And whilst the Storm Chimera is really cool, you don't need the Storm Chimera. The regular Chimera will get you by. You know, and you don't need the Centaur Light Carrier. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's unique. But you know, if you're part of the regular Guard Codex, you've already got the Taurox, you've already got the Chimera. You don't need an extra transport. You know, what's it really bringing to the table? You know, it has a niche. I'm not saying it's useless. I'm speaking from a Games Workshop point of view. I'm not saying this. I'm speaking for Games Workshop here. You know, imagine I am Games Workshop. I love the Centaur Light Carrier. But you know, that's what Games Workshop people were saying. They were like, if we fold them into the Guard, guess what? The faction's going to remain up to date. They're going to get access to the whole slew of Guard options, and it will allow us to keep the faction balanced and streamlined. And there's you know, the less anomalies you have, the less sub factions you have, the better, right? You can streamline the game a bit better. You can make the game a little bit more balanced. And looking at that now, you know, and as a Krieg player, does this change fundamentally? Does the change that they've made change the way I look at my Krieg? Yeah, of course it does. It just changed the way I look at my Krieg. But I can still use my army, and I can fold them in, and I can use them as, you know, they're just not as unique anymore. You know, they're not as cool. They're just another Guard regiment now. And so the logical side of my brain, the Mordian Glory brain here, is saying like, I can understand why they did it, but my heart is, my creative side is like, but it was cool being separate. But that's the thing. So Games Workshop has to try and balance this. They have to balance this mad sleigh ride, which is Warhammer 40k. Because if they go nuts and they go too far the other way and they go super creative and they go back to the days of 7th when they said, we're not a rules company, we're a models company, and they just kept releasing more and more crazy stuff, that is totally broken and unbalanced. But it doesn't matter, right? It's just fun. It's beer and pretzels game. You don't really care if you win or lose. But people did care if they won or lost. Then the other community will complain. The competitive players will say, the match play players will say, this game is bullshit. This game is bullshit. Like, I don't like playing it because I haven't got a chance. This is an air fix. I do play this game to try and win. So Games Workshop has to try and balance these two camps. They have to try and keep both camps happy. And unfortunately, you know, I mean, just to be totally honest, I think they do a 5 out of 10. Not, you know, they get like a solid C grade. You know, they don't get a C minus, they don't get a C plus, because they do make, you know, I think they do make some decisions, but then sometimes it's just like, oh yeah, you know, eradicators. You know, so I saw an analysis today of someone comparing eradicators to suppressors, and why you would never take suppressors, because eradicators are better against every target apart from some some horde units. There's an example of where it doesn't quite work. But I get it. So why do I feel sorry for Games Workshop, right? Why do I feel sorry for Games Workshop? Okay, because I've sort of explained the two camps, and I've waffled on and on about the different things and so on and so forth. Why do I feel sorry for Games Workshop? Because at the end of sort of 7th, everyone was like, you need to fix this game. If you don't, there won't be a Games Workshop going forward. No one's going to buy it anymore. So they fixed it. And what they did with 8th was they reset the clock, and then they went really. The beginning of 8th was so. At the beginning of 8th is my favourite edition. Between 3rd edition to 9th edition, the first year and a half of 8th edition is like my favourite part. Okay, because they made rules for everything. There was rules for days. And the thing that's happened is over the course of 8th and 9th edition, there's been this, if it hasn't got models, we're not going to make rules for it policy. And they do that because they use that as an excuse to make model lines more efficient and to trim the game and to try and help make the game a bit more balanced. And by middle of 8th, the game was pretty balanced. It was pretty good, and then things started going a bit wacky again. But the point is that the problem is that as the game has tried to get more and more balanced, as Games Workshop has lent more and more into the competitive community, and I would argue that 9th edition, it might not be perfectly balanced, but 9th edition from the outset, Games Workshop has done more than they've ever done to embrace the competitive community and to play test the game and to listen to community feedback. And the problem is that that's really good, but we're starting to see. I think we're starting to go a little bit too far the other way. I think a bit too much creativity is being sacrificed. But then if they go nuts on the creativity, you know what's going to happen. They're going to release something that's really awesome, but is broken. And then everyone will complain about it not being balanced, and the competitive crowd will pipe up again, won't they? I just think the problem is that I think there's this, and I don't know what the answer is, but I'm saying this is the situation that they're in, and it is literally creativity versus competitiveness. However, I do think, to draw upon some examples, I don't think they do themselves any favours. Okay, I don't think they do themselves any favours whatsoever. And a really good example of them not doing themselves any favours is the Tao Faction. Okay, you might be like, what are you talking about, Mordian Glory? You hate Tao. The less good things to say about the Tao, the better. It's like, yeah, okay, fair enough. But look at the Tao model. Look at the Tao when they were first introduced in like 3rd and 4th edition. They were put forward as this race, or that was the only race in 40k that actually worked with other people. And you had like two different aliens that worked alongside each other. You had the Tau and you had the crew. And the Tau had like some tanks and some battle suits and some infantry, which was cool. But the crew had a surprisingly large amount of units relative to the number of Tau units that were available. We've got to remember there weren't things like Riptides and all these other kind of things. There was just like crisis suits, hammerheads, devilfish. Yeah, there were the little battle suits, crisis and broadside. There was the infantry, which was Pathfinder and Fire Warrior, and then you had the hammerhead and the devilfish, the same tank basically. That was it. You had some infantry, some battle that looked the same, battle suits that looked relatively similar, and tanks that looked relatively similar. And the crew had a pretty decent amount of units. You had the crew infantry, you had the shaper, and then you had the crew hounds and the crew tox. And it's like, oh wow, so you've got, it's like a 60-40 split. The crew are pretty well represented in this book. That's pretty cool. And then then they started introducing things like Vespids, and it was like, oh, it's amazing. And Chapter Approved did these things where you could take like different crew that had like evolved slightly differently depending on what they'd eaten. So you could take Orky crew that had eaten lots of orcs if they got an extra toughness. It was really cool. And then that was really creative, and that's what they should have kept doing. But then instead, something got lost along the way, and they went, probably a bit like this video of me going off on a tangent. But then they went down the route of more battle suits. Bigger is better. It's like, no, releasing bigger and bigger battle suits isn't better. It's not a sign of creativity. It's a sign of just making something bigger. You know, but we've got the storm surges now, which utterly contradict the original concept of the Tau, which was they didn't believe in big units. They didn't believe in pitched battles. If they, you know, they were the few races that would cede ground to the enemy and all this kind of stuff. Like the Imperium used to hate fighting them because they found them cowardly, because they struggled to bring them to a conclusive battle. When they did, they'd often win, but they had to try. The trick for the Imperium was to try and bring the Tau to battle when the Tau didn't need to and wouldn't. And the Tau were masters of small unit tactics, and that's why Marines were the equal sort of Tau, even though the Tau were like not augmetic or enhanced, you know, anywhere near as much as the Marines. Their tactics were able to help keep the Marines on their toes, and the Guard really struggled against Tau because the Guard relied on bringing people to a pitched battle. So creativity went down the crapper, and instead you started getting things like bigger battle suits, which aren't creative but are just more powerful. And then the competitive crowd, you know, at first lapped it up and they loved the Riptides, and then it went too far the other way, and you had things like Riptides that could shoot 4 times a turn. Thank you, 7th edition formations. And it went too far the other way into the just exploding and power and everything. And I think that's an example of Games Workshop not doing themselves any favours. And not looking at the Riptide before it got broken overpowered, just looking at it from a creativity point of view. It wasn't a creative unit. It's a bigger battle suit. It's more powerful. And since the introduction of the Riptides, how reliant has the Tau Faction become on them? Utterly. Since the Riptides were introduced, I don't know of a single competitive Tau army, consistently competitive Tau army, that didn't feature them. Even just one to like tank things. And you know, even like your Viras and stuff like that. Yeah. So I know this video is a bit of a long sort of rambly one, and it goes on a few different tangents, but the point of the video is, guys, is that, you know, this is the battle that constantly goes on in the Warhammer 40k community, and we have to kind of have to decide, do we want, you know, Krieg being rolled into the Ashmilitarum Codex to streamline things? Do we want just bigger battle suits, you know, which are easier to balance and and to make strong, you know, to either, you know, nerf or buff? You know, it's a battle suit at the end of the day. It does the same thing that other battle suits do, it's just bigger. You know, it's just more efficient, but it is basically the same thing. You know, we're not looking at it from a broken point of view. We're just looking at it from a creativity versus competitive point of view. You know, do you want the game? You know, if you want the game to be more balanced, if we as a community keep screaming about balance, then things are going to get dropped, because the only way you can balance the game is to streamline it. That's the only way you can do it. And I don't know. I honestly don't, because on the one hand, I miss the creativity. You know, I actually spent some time yesterday going through what the Guard used to be able to get just on your infantry squads. It sucks. I don't think a lot of new players don't appreciate this. There used to be a full model range for every Guard regiment. You didn't have to go somewhere else and kit bash your Cadians. And yeah, doing a head swap on Cadians does make a big difference, but they still look like, you know, a head swap Cadian. They look different, don't get me wrong. They do look a lot different. But they don't look as different, you know, Valhalla Ice Warrior looks very different to a Cadian with a head swap. You know, it does. So does a Talar, you know, so just think about this. There used to be full model ranges for every Guard regiment. You know, Diff Steel Legion, Vostroyan, Mordian, Talar, Valhallan. These all used to have their own regiments. Now you've got Cadian and Catachan. And Armageddon have got a single box left. Armageddon used to have plasma gunners, used to have 3 different kind of officers, their own special commissar. They used to have las cannons and heavy bolter teams and missile launcher teams available. They used to have everything. Now they've got one box. You know, it sucks, man. It sucks. But, you know, I think that's the answer. I think coming to the answer myself, this has been my personal take on it. I would love you guys to let me know what you think over the whole creativity versus competitiveness, but especially around this particular topic, this sort of final thought, which is, I think the way that you do creativity is you give is like what people used, like what Games Workshop used to do with the Guard, like what they currently do with Marines, which is you give people, you keep the unit options relatively simplistic. You don't go and create bigger, badder, crazier, stupid units. You know, you don't have Titans and Knights in games of 40k. They're for Apocalypse only. You keep it relatively, you keep the options relatively simple. But what you do is you provide people with more of those basic options. So imagine, you know, so you have the basic Space Marine kit, but every single chapter's got an upgrade kit. You have a basic Guard kit, but every regiment has an upgrade sprue. You have your basic Eldar kits, but every Eldercraft world has a different potential upgrade sprue. You know, you can buy the Elatok one, which is loads of like upgrade bits, like people with bits of grass stuck in their hair and stuff like that. You know, you could do it with Tau. You think of all the different armor designs that Tau could have. You know, I know I'm not a big Tau fan at all. You guys know this, but you know the fact they're still using the basic Fire Warrior kit. You know, it's not changed much, has it? They've got like a little turret in there now. Think of the different things you could do with orcs. They used to have savage orcs, not just in Age of Sigmar, but they used to have savage orcs in 40k. And instead of having Nob war bikers, you had Nob cyber boar riders and boar boys in space, and they rode warthogs. How cool is that? You know, imagine the different pharaoh dynasties you could really get into the modelling. I mean, you know, imagine if the Necrons weren't just pharaohs in space, but they were different classical age nations in space. So you could have the Roman themed Necrons, you could have the Egyptian themed Necrons, you could have the ancient Greek, the Macedonian themed Necrons. How cool would that be? That's just 3 right off the top of my head. You know, like you have the Carthaginian themed Necrons. There's so many different ones you could have. You know, that's so cool. But, you know, instead we get, you know, what's you know, you got Wraith Guard. What's better than Wraith Guard? A Wraith Lord. What's bigger than a Wraith Lord? A Wraith Knight. Oh yeah, it's not creative. It's just something bigger isn't better. So there's kind of like 2 threads. I guess it's like two feelings, 2 thoughts in this video, which is, you know, what do you think about the creative versus competitiveness? You know, how would you do it better? My solution is, you know, keep the game simple, but give people more like fluffy, creative options that way. That would be that's the second theme, which is what do you think about the game getting dumbed down in many ways? I think at the end of the day, yeah, that would be they're the sort of 2 thoughts that are going through my head at the moment. Anyway, guys, I've rambled on long enough. I've probably repeated myself a billion times. Slight exaggeration. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.